The reporter stared at me, then looked back at the camera. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, lowering the microphone. "Can you repeat your name?" The police officers surrounding the scene suddenly stopped talking. A woman across the street dropped the grocery bag she was carrying. An older man stepped closer, squinting at my face as if he'd seen a ghost. "My name is Daniel Carter," I answered. Silence spread through the crowd. Then someone whispered words I hadn't heard in 23 years. "That's the Carter family." My stomach tightened. I hadn't used that last name in decades. Not because I didn't want it. Because my family had made sure nobody believed I ever belonged to them. And the worst part? They were all watching the evening news at that exact moment. When I was 8 years old, my mother packed every picture of me into cardboard boxes. I remember standing in the hallway, hugging my old baseball glove while she climbed onto a chair to remove framed photos from the living room wall. "Mom?" I asked. She didn't answer. She slid one picture into a trash bag. Then another. Then another. My older sister, Emily, walked by carrying a stack of photo albums. She never looked at me. Dad stood near the front door with his arms crossed. His face was blank. Like none of this hurt him. I still remember asking the question that changed everything. "Did I do something wrong?" Dad finally looked at me. His eyes stayed cold. "No." "Then why are you taking my pictures?" He hesitated. Only for a second. "Because it'll be easier this way." Those 6 words stayed with me for the rest of my life. It'll be easier this way. Nobody explained what that meant. Nobody hugged me. Nobody cried. The next morning, I was sitting in the back seat of my Aunt Linda's old station wagon with one suitcase and my baseball glove. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." I looked back through the rear window. My parents were already walking back inside the house. Either of them waved. The front door closed. That was the last time I saw them for almost 25 years. Aunt Linda lived in a small town nearly 3 hours away. Her house wasn't fancy. The roof leaked during heavy rain. The kitchen cabinets were older than I was. But every night she asked the same question. "How was your day?" At first, I never answered. I didn't know how. I kept waiting for someone to tell me I didn't belong there either. Instead, she kept setting 2 plates on the table every evening. One for her. One for me. Slowly, I started talking. She never pushed. Never demanded answers. Never asked why my parents had abandoned me. She simply loved me. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with grand speeches. Sometimes it looks like grilled cheese sandwiches after school. Or warm blankets fresh from the dryer. Or someone remembering your birthday when everyone else forgets. Linda gave me all of those things. She worked double shifts at the local diner just to keep food on the table. At night, after she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her sitting at the kitchen table counting dollar bills. Sometimes she cried quietly. By morning, she smiled again. "Ready for pancakes?" She made ordinary days feel safe. That safety slowly became home. When I turned 16, curiosity finally won. I searched for my family online. Nothing. No photos with me. No mention of my name. It was as if I had never existed. I found Emily's social media. Graduation pictures. Family vacations. Christmas mornings. Birthday parties. Every family photo showed 4 people. Mom. Dad. Emily. My younger brother Noah. I wasn't missing. I had been erased. One picture stopped me cold. It showed the exact fireplace where dozens of childhood photos once hung. The wall looked perfect. Except every picture that had once included me had been replaced. The spaces where I had smiled as a little boy now held different memories. Different versions of history. My chest tightened. People delete files. People throw away clothes. My family had deleted a child. I closed the laptop. Linda found me sitting on the porch long after midnight. "You found them." It wasn't a question. I nodded. "They don't have a single picture of me." She sat beside me without speaking. After a long silence, she finally whispered, "Some people rewrite history because the truth hurts too much." "What truth?" She looked toward the dark road. "I promised your grandmother I wouldn't tell you." My heart skipped. "You know?" "I know enough." "Then tell me." She shook her head. "Not yet." That answer frustrated me for years. But looking back now, she wasn't protecting them. She was protecting me. Life kept moving. I graduated high school, worked construction, saved every dollar I could. Eventually, I became a paramedic. People often asked why I chose that job. The answer was simple. I knew exactly what it felt like to wait for someone to help. I never wanted anyone else to feel alone. The work wasn't easy. Long nights, car accidents, heart attacks, children crying for parents, parents crying for children. Every shift reminded me how quickly life could disappear. It also taught me something important. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it's the strangers who refuse to leave your side. That lesson became my purpose. Years passed. Linda grew older. Her hands began shaking whenever she poured coffee. Her knees hurt climbing stairs. One afternoon, while fixing the porch railing, I noticed her struggling to catch her breath. "You okay?" "I'm fine." She smiled. But the smile faded too quickly. 2 weeks later, she collapsed in the grocery store. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Machines beeped softly beside her bed. She looked smaller somehow. Fragile. The doctor closed the chart. "Heart failure." The words echoed inside my head. "Can you treat it?" "We'll manage it." Manage. Not cure. When we were finally alone, Linda reached beneath her pillow and handed me a worn envelope. The paper had turned yellow with age. My name was written across the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Don't open it yet," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because once you read it, everything changes." I tried asking questions. She only smiled. "Promise me." "I promise." She squeezed my hand. "I've carried that for 23 years. My throat tightened. "Who wrote it?" Her eyes drifted toward the window. "Someone who loved you very much." Before I could ask another question, a nurse walked inside. The conversation ended. But the envelope stayed in my jacket pocket. For weeks, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Fear has a strange way of convincing you that unanswered questions are safer than painful answers. Then came the phone call at 3 a.m. Linda passed away quietly in her sleep. The funeral was small. A few neighbors, former coworkers, people whose lives she touched without ever asking for recognition. As everyone left the cemetery, I remained beside her grave. The wind pushed dried leaves across the grass. For the first time since I was 8 years old, I was completely alone. Or so I believed. An older woman approached slowly, leaning on a cane. Her silver hair moved gently in the breeze. She stopped beside me. "You have your mother's eyes." My heart stopped. "I think you have the wrong person." She looked straight into my face. "No." Her voice barely shook. "I've waited 25 years to find you." Every muscle in my body went tense. "Who are you?" She reached into her purse and carefully removed an old photograph. It showed a little boy laughing while sitting on someone's shoulders. Me. The picture had never been destroyed. Someone had kept it all these years. I stared at the woman. "How do you have this?" Tears filled her eyes. "Because your grandmother made me promise to protect the truth." She looked toward Linda's fresh grave. "Now that she's gone." She glanced at the unopened envelope still tucked inside my jacket. "It's finally time for you to learn why your family spent 25 years pretending you never existed." And for the first time in my life, I realized being forgotten had never been the real story. The real story was why they had been so desperate to erase me. The old woman waited until the last car pulled out of the cemetery before she spoke again. "My name is Margaret Hayes." She held out a trembling hand. I was your grandmother Eleanor's closest friend. I looked at the faded photograph again. The edges were worn from being handled for years. Someone had loved this picture enough to protect it. That alone didn't make sense. If my grandmother cared about me, I asked, why didn't she come get me? Margaret closed her eyes for a moment. She tried. The words landed like a punch. What do you mean, she tried? Your parents wouldn't let her. I shook my head. No, that's impossible. I wish it were. She pointed toward a bench beneath an old oak tree. Sit with me. For nearly 25 years, I had imagined this conversation 1,000 different ways. None of them felt like this. I sat. The wind carried the smell of fresh cut grass across the cemetery. Margaret looked toward the horizon before beginning. The story you've been told isn't the story that happened. When you were 7, she said, your father lost his job. I frowned. I thought he owned a construction company. He did. Until he didn't. The business collapsed after a lawsuit. Bills piled up. The bank threatened foreclosure. Every day another notice arrived in the mailbox. Your parents were drowning. Then something happened that made everything worse. What? Your younger brother, Noah, became seriously ill. I remembered Noah only as a toddler. Always smiling. Always following me around. What was wrong with him? A rare heart condition. My chest tightened. The surgeries, the hospital stays, they cost more money than your parents had. So they gave me away? Margaret looked at me with sad eyes. No. Then explain it. She took a slow breath. They convinced themselves they had only enough strength to save one child. I stood up. No parent thinks like that. They do when fear replaces reason. I turned away. None of this felt real. They didn't stop loving you. I laughed bitterly. They erased me. Yes. Those aren't the same thing. No, she whispered. They aren't. That night I finally opened the envelope Linda had protected for so many years. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper crackled as I unfolded it. The first line made my hands shake. To my grandson Daniel. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here to tell you the truth myself. I recognized none of the handwriting. But every word felt painfully alive. Your parents made the worst decision of their lives. Not because they stopped loving you. Because they believed losing one son would save another. I couldn't breathe. The letter continued. When Noah became sick, the medical bills buried the family. Social services became involved after your father lost his job. There were fears all of you would be separated into foster care. I kept reading. Your Aunt Linda volunteered to become your legal guardian until things improved. Guardian. Not abandoned. The plan was supposed to last 1 year. 1 year. I whispered the words aloud. 1 year. The letter blurred through tears. But shame changes people. The longer you stayed away, the harder it became for your parents to admit what they had done. I leaned back in my chair. 25 years. Destroyed by pride. Not necessity. The next page hurt even more. Your grandmother begged them every Christmas to bring you home. Every birthday she wrapped presents that were never delivered. Every Thanksgiving she argued until your father walked away from the dinner table. I remembered every lonely birthday. Every Christmas wondering whether anyone remembered. They had. They simply chose silence. The final paragraph nearly broke me. Please don't let hatred become your inheritance. Truth matters more than revenge. The letter ended with 3 words. Love always. Grandma Eleanor. I had never even met her. Yet somehow, she understood me better than anyone. Sleep never came. The next morning I drove 3 hours toward the town where I'd been born. Everything looked smaller. The grocery store. The church. The baseball field. Time had aged every building except my memories. Eventually I parked across from my childhood home. Fresh paint. Different mailbox. Someone else lived there now. A little girl rode a bicycle across the driveway. Her father chased behind her laughing. "You're doing it!" She wobbled. Almost fell. He caught her before she hit the ground. I looked away. That tiny moment hurt more than anything. Not because I wanted his life. Because I wondered what mine could have been. I checked into a cheap motel. I wasn't ready to see my parents. Not yet. Instead, I visited the public library. Old newspapers filled dusty shelves. I searched for my father's business. There it was. Headline after headline. Local contractor declares bankruptcy. Family faces financial collapse. Then another article caught my eye. Community rallies to help sick child. The photograph showed Noah in a hospital bed. My parents stood beside him. Emily smiled through tears. There was one empty space in the picture. The caption listed everyone present. My name wasn't mentioned. Even before I was erased at home. The world had already begun forgetting me. That afternoon someone knocked on my motel door. I froze. Nobody knew I was here. Another knock. Slow. Gentle. I opened the door. A man in his late 20s stood there. Dark hair. Blue eyes. He looked strangely familiar. He stared at me without speaking. Finally he whispered, "Daniel?" I nodded cautiously. He covered his mouth. "Oh my God!" Tears rolled down his face. "I've been looking for you." My pulse quickened. "Who are you? You really don't recognize me?" I searched his face. Then I noticed the scar above his left eyebrow. A childhood memory flashed across my mind. A little boy falling off a swing. Me carrying him inside. Mom laughing while putting on a bandage. I looked back at the man. "Noah?" He laughed and cried at the same time. "You remembered." Before I could react, he wrapped me in a hug. I stood completely still. I didn't know how to hug a brother who had disappeared 25 years ago. He stepped back quickly. "I'm sorry." He wiped his eyes. I never thought I'd actually find you." "You were looking?" "For years." I stared at him. "But everyone said." "I know what everyone said." His smile disappeared. "They lied to me too." We drove to a quiet diner outside town. Neither of us touched the food. Noah kept staring at me like he was trying to memorize my face. "When did you learn about me?" I finally asked. He looked down at his coffee. "When I was 14. "What happened?" "I found an old family picture hidden in Grandma's attic." "The one with me?" He nodded. "I asked Mom who the boy was. And? They told me he was a cousin." I smiled bitterly. "You believed them." "I wanted to." He swallowed hard. "But Grandma pulled me aside later." He looked directly into my eyes. "She told me the truth." I leaned forward. "What truth?" "That I had an older brother." The restaurant suddenly felt too quiet. "What did you do?" "I begged them to bring you home." "And?" "They refused." His voice cracked. "Dad said it was too late." He laughed bitterly. "He actually said we've all moved on." I clenched my fists beneath the table. Noah continued. "I started asking questions every day." "What happened?" "They stopped answering." "Worse than that." He looked out the window. "They stopped speaking to Grandma." I blinked. "What?" "They blamed her for telling me." A painful silence settled between us. Then Noah reached into his backpack. "I've been carrying something for almost 15 years. He placed a thick stack of envelopes on the table. Every one had my name written across the front. My hands started shaking again. "What are these?" "I wrote you a letter every birthday." I couldn't speak. "I never knew where you lived. So I kept them." 25 birthdays. 25 chances to know I wasn't forgotten by everyone. One envelope slipped open. Inside was a page written in childish handwriting. "Happy 15th birthday. I hope wherever you are, someone made you a cake." A tear landed on the paper. Noah quietly said, "I never stopped believing we'd meet." I looked at my younger brother. The little boy I'd blamed for decades. He hadn't stolen my family. He'd lost one too. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Daniel. I looked up. Mom and Dad still don't know I've found you. I nodded slowly. They're going to. He hesitated. No. His face turned pale. They're about to find out another way. What do you mean? He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened a local news website. My photograph filled the screen. It had been taken the night before at the cemetery. Below it was a breaking headline. Unidentified hero saves child from fatal highway crash. Police seek man who walked away before being thanked. Noah looked at me with wide eyes. They're replaying your face on every evening news station in the state. I stared at the screen. Then my phone began vibrating. An unknown number. A second later. Another. Then another. And before I could answer a single call, Noah whispered the words neither of us was ready to hear. They finally know you're alive. Daniel's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Unknown number. Unknown number. Unknown number. Then one contact appeared that froze him. Emily. His thumb hovered over the screen. 25 years of silence. Reduced to a single ringing phone. He let it ring. Then it stopped. A text appeared. Please answer. It's me. Another message arrived before he could think. We just saw you on the news. Then another. Dad is crying. Daniel stared at those 3 words. They felt unreal. His father, the man who had watched him leave without a goodbye, was crying. Noah looked across the table. You don't have to answer. I know. But one way or another. He looked at the phone. This ends today. The television above the diner counter replayed the rescue. Traffic camera footage showed a pickup truck rolling onto its side after swerving to avoid another vehicle. Smoke poured from the engine. People stood back in panic. Then one man sprinted toward the wreck. Daniel. The footage wasn't clear enough to show his face at first. But another driver had filmed the rescue on a cell phone. The second video showed everything. Daniel smashing the rear window. Climbing inside. Shielding a little girl from shattered glass. Carrying her away seconds before flames swallowed the truck. The diner had gone quiet. A waitress smiled. That's you? Daniel nodded awkwardly. You saved her life. I just got there first. The waitress shook her head. No. She looked at the television. You stayed. Daniel couldn't answer. Because staying had always been the one thing nobody had done for him. By evening the story had spread across the state. News stations praised the mysterious paramedic who disappeared before reporters could interview him. The rescued girl's parents begged viewers to help identify him. His photograph filled television screens. Social media. Local newspapers. People called him a hero. Meanwhile, across town, the Carter family living room had fallen completely silent. Emily dropped the remote. His mother covered her mouth. His father never looked away from the television. It's him. His voice barely came out. Emily whispered. Daniel. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because the little boy they had erased had just become the face everyone in town recognized. Daniel spent that night walking through empty streets. He wasn't hiding anymore. He simply needed to think. Around midnight his phone rang again. This time, he answered. Neither side spoke. Finally, a quiet voice whispered, Daniel? His knees almost gave out. It was his mother. 25 years disappeared into one trembling word. She started crying. Real crying. Not polite tears. The kind that makes speaking impossible. I'm so sorry. Daniel looked up at the dark sky. He had imagined this moment his entire life. He thought he'd yell. He thought he'd demand answers. Instead, he simply asked, Why? Silence. Then came the truth. We kept waiting for the right time. Daniel closed his eyes. There wasn't one. I know. We thought 1 year would become 2. I know. Then 5. I know. Then. She couldn't finish. Daniel did. You got used to life without me. The silence that followed was answer enough. His mother whispered. I hated myself every birthday. Daniel felt tears running down his face. You still let them pass. I know. I waited. I know. I thought every Christmas maybe. Her sobs became louder. I know. Finally she whispered. Can you ever forgive me? Daniel looked across the empty street. I don't know. It was the most honest answer he had ever given. The next morning Noah knocked on Daniel's motel door. They're waiting. Who? Everyone. Daniel followed him. They drove to the old church where his grandmother's funeral had been held years earlier. The parking lot overflowed with cars. Friends. Neighbors. Former co-workers. People curious about the story on television. As Daniel stepped out, the crowd slowly parted. At the end of the walkway stood 3 people. Emily. His mother. His father. Older. Smaller. Nothing like the giants from his childhood memories. Emily walked first. She stopped a few feet away. I'm sorry. Daniel nodded politely. She began crying. I should have come after you. You were a kid. I still knew it was wrong. She reached into her purse. I've carried this since I was 13. She handed him a folded photograph. It showed the 4 Carter children. Daniel. Emily. Little Noah. Their parents. Someone had carefully cut Daniel out years ago. But Emily had taped the missing piece back into place. The tape had yellowed with age. I fixed it the night they destroyed the albums. Daniel traced the edge with his finger. She had been trying. In the only way a child could. Then his father stepped forward. The strongest man Daniel had ever known suddenly looked terrified. I don't expect forgiveness. Daniel remained silent. His father nodded. I don't deserve it. Another long pause. I thought I was protecting the family. Daniel finally spoke. You protected your guilt. The words hit harder than shouting ever could. His father lowered his head. You're right. I wasn't the problem. No. You were ashamed. Yes. You chose pretending over fixing it. His father's shoulders shook. Every single day. For the first time. Daniel saw something he had never expected. Not pride. Not anger. Not excuses. Only regret. Real regret. The kind that arrives decades too late. His mother slowly approached. She didn't try to hug him. She simply held out a small wooden box. I think this belongs to you. Inside were dozens of tiny memories. His first baby shoe. A blue ribbon from elementary school. A birthday candle shaped like the number 8. Report cards. Little drawings. A toy sheriff badge. Daniel looked up in confusion. You kept these? She nodded through tears. I couldn't throw them away. Then why? She answered before he finished. Because looking at them hurt too much. Daniel finally understood something. They hadn't erased him because he meant nothing. They erased him because every reminder forced them to face what they had done. That didn't excuse it. But it explained it. Sometimes people bury the truth. Because they cannot survive looking at it. Just as nobody knew what to say next. A little girl came running across the church lawn. She stopped in front of Daniel. It was the child from the highway rescue. She held out a handmade picture. Stick figures. A burning car. A smiling man with a cape. Across the top she had written in crooked letters. Thank you for saving me. Daniel smiled for the first time all week. Her mother walked over. I hope you don't mind. She looked around at the Carter family. We've all seen your story. She gently squeezed Daniel's shoulder. My daughter is alive because when everyone else stepped back, you stepped forward. The little girl hugged him without hesitation. The entire parking lot watched. Several people quietly wiped away tears. At that moment, Daniel realized something. His life would never again be defined by what had been taken from him. Only by what he chose to give others. A month later, Daniel returned to work as a paramedic. He didn't want interviews. He didn't want awards. He wanted normal life. But one evening, his station received an unexpected visitor. A television producer. "We're doing a special on everyday heroes." Daniel smiled politely. "I appreciate it, but I'm not interested." The producer nodded. "I thought you might say that." He handed Daniel an envelope. Inside was a letter. Hundreds of signatures filled the page. Families he had helped over the years. Children he'd comforted. Elderly patients he'd carried to safety. Strangers whose names he barely remembered. One sentence had been written across the top. "You spent your life making sure nobody else felt forgotten." Daniel quietly folded the letter. For the first time, he cried without sadness. The Carter family never became perfect. There were awkward dinners, long conversations, painful memories. Some questions had no answers. Some wounds left scars. But little by little, new memories began replacing old ones. His father attended therapy. His mother volunteered with children entering foster care. Emily visited every Sunday. Noah became Daniel's closest friend. Not because blood demanded it. Because both brothers chose it. Choice mattered now. One spring afternoon, nearly a year after the rescue, the family gathered at a local park. No cameras. No reporters. Just blankets, sandwiches, and laughter. Noah tossed a baseball toward Daniel. "You still catch like you're 12. Daniel laughed and threw it back. His father watched quietly from a picnic table. After a while he walked over carrying a framed photograph. It was brand new. Taken that afternoon. Everyone stood together. Smiling. No empty spaces. No missing faces. His father handed it to Daniel. "This one stays on the wall." Daniel looked at the picture for a long time. Then at the people standing around him. The family who had once erased him. The brother who had searched for him. The sister who had secretly saved his place. The parents who would spend the rest of their lives earning back what they had lost. Nothing could erase the pain of the past. But neither could the past erase the future. Daniel smiled, wrapped one arm around Noah, another around Emily, and looked toward the camera. This time, nobody cut him out. And when that photograph was finally hung in the Carter family's living room, it wasn't there to hide an old mistake. It was there to remind everyone who walked through the front door that the strongest families are not the ones who never break. They're the ones brave enough to face the truth, ask for forgiveness, and make sure no one is ever forgotten again.